Energy prices are notoriously hard to understand why they do what they do. They're all over the place, and it backed off a little, not quite as bad, but you might know a little bit about it, being from North Dakota. What happened in the last couple of years? Did we mess something up? Is any of this self-inflicted? Suddenly we're begging OPEC for help when just a couple of years ago, I thought that we were the swing producer with all of our horizontal drilling.
Right. Yeah. Well, the innovators in North Dakota and Texas and other places around our country made us the player. When we lifted the oil export ban in the Obama administration, you saw the WTI and the Brent, for example, on crude oil come closer together in price. Refined product is largely defined by the Brent price, the international price. So we became the price setter, if you will. Now, obviously, there are other players in the world, particularly Saudi Arabia and OPEC, that can manipulate the markets with an oversupply. But when we went into the pandemic, I mean, let's face it, that's not our fault. That's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault. Obviously, demand went way down. And with that, of course, drilling slowed down. But you saw the Saudis and OPEC flooding our market at a time when our domestic producers were slowing down, and that warped the situation. But coming out of the pandemic, when demand was going back up, in comes Joe Biden, and he shuts down supply by the prohibition on federal lands, the drilling on federal lands. Then he begs OPEC for help to produce more so that he doesn't have to suffer as the inflation president. These are self-inflicted. These are the direct result of policies that stifle domestic development and then begs for global development. And here's the worst part, Joe. At the time all of this is happening, he greenlights Nord Stream 2, the gas line from Russia to many of our allies in Europe. And not only is that just bad economics, but it's bad for the environment and bad for the climate. Natural gas produced in Russia and sent over pipeline to our allies emits 41% more greenhouse gas emissions through the life cycle of that gas than natural gas produced in the United States, liquefied and sent on a ship to the same countries. So it's contrary to everything that he says he believes. Bad for the economy, bad for jobs, bad for national security, and bad for the climate. Other than that, it's a great idea. I mean, it makes no sense.
Senator, I wanted to read you a quote. This is from the CFO of Chevron, and in many ways, it's the antithesis of what you just said in terms of why prices have gone up. He says the rise in prices, quote, feels more cyclical than structural. We had rapid demand decreases last year, followed by rapid increases this year, and it's hard for supply to adjust as quickly as demand, and it does appear that supply is lagging. He was asked directly about this. This is somebody who's the CFO of one of the largest energy companies in the world, and effectively was saying it wasn't a function of the things that you just discussed.
Well, except he's arguing with himself. Now, remember, I come from North Dakota. We are, largely independent producers. We have large ones as well, multinationals. But if you're a Chevron CEO, you're going to take a different view of the supply when your supply is produced wherever you want to produce it. But when you're landlocked in the middle of the North American continent, granted, I take a little bit different view. But even in his own argument, he's right. Supply doesn't just ramp up real quickly, but it ramps up a lot quicker than it used to. And there is an anti-supply policy coming from Joe Biden. I mean, he's the one that shut down leases on federal lands. And federal lands are a very important part of the value chain of oil production and natural gas production.
Senator, I'm not disagreeing with you. And I think actually there's going to be potentially long-term effects as a result of that. The question is whether those effects are being seen in the price today, and that's where I think there's actually a real question.
Sure, but the price today is certainly part of the fundamentals of supply and demand and getting them back to balance, and we'll get there. But we're not going to get there if places like North Dakota have to continue to produce 400,000 barrels less. Or, by the way, there's also the uncertainty of the infrastructure that moves the product, the shutting down of pipelines while you're allowing the green lighting pipelines in Russia. All of that contributes. And while it may not contribute to the moment, it certainly contributes to the speculation going forward and the investment that's attracted by certainty and shed by uncertainty that's created by these policies. So I think it's both near-term and long-term, certainly probably more of a long-term effect, but it's all bad. And it's contributing. It's contributing to the supply shortage, and that's contributing, obviously, to inflation.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.